Well, good morning, everybody. I was thinking this morning of how grateful I am for this network. It's just an incredible resource, and I thought about trying to add up the cumulative years of passion that we represent, and I think it's between 600 and 1,000 years. The problem is pretty important and deep, and working on it that long may sound like we're not very well organized because that's a lot of years, but it has just been an incredible opportunity to meet people who share a passion about making the world a better place for vulnerable folks especially. And so I want to welcome you all today to our work together and to remind us of our meeting norms. I just put them in the chat. I've just talked just briefly about the ones that have to do with Zoom. And then next week, maybe I'll say a little more about one of the other ones. But we are asking people to mute themselves when they're not speaking, to use the raise hand feature when we're asking to be recognized. And Rob's pretty good at seeing us, so give that a try. It also keeps track of what order we're in if we're speaking. And then if you need to be doing something else, to stop your video, or because some of us talk with our hands like this. And so that can be kind of distracting to folks who aren't in the same conversation. So again, to say we're an open table, we have opportunities for people to be involved. We're a volunteer bunch of folks. We don't have staff to follow up with everything with you if you're interested, but I wanted to encourage you to use the chat box for both conversation and opportunities to network. Put your name in, what you're interested in, what you wish you knew about. And either someone here is here who might contact you, or you can just save the chat for yourself to pursue those things offline. So I think with that, I would like to invite anybody who's new today, maybe speaking or is new to us, or is returning after some time away, to just let us know your name, and if you represent an organization, what that is. So you could raise your hand maybe to be recognized. That might practice that a little bit, and we'll see who's here. Hasn't been here before. All right, Roxy.
Hi everyone, I'm Roxy. I work at the Multicultural Child and Family Hope Center. I was on these calls shortly before COVID and haven't been on since. We at our agency have just received a grant to be a part of the homeless street outreach teams. So we'll be doing that. And we also have tiny houses and a recovery house too.
Oh, wonderful. Great to have you here, Roxy.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Hi, thanks. I'm Sarah Miller. I'm the Transit Safety Program Manager at Sound Transit, and Rob invited me to come and speak with you. This is my first meeting, so I'm not sure if he said I had some time. A few minutes.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sarah. It's wonderful to have you. We really hope to learn good stuff. All right, anybody else? I'm not sure I can see everybody on my screen, but so if you're new, just unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nancy Huseman. I'm a case manager for the Health Home program at Community Health Care Clinic on Hilltop. And I am half my population of clients right now are currently homeless or close to being homeless. So this is my first time. I'm here to gather information and I want to become involved.
Well, that's excellent, Nancy, and that's a wonderful resource on the Hilltop. So thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, my name is Danielle. I am, this is my second meeting, but I work at Catholic Community Services, but I am part of an extension for the Puyallup pilot program at a hotel that is temporarily housing the homeless so that we can be able to hopefully get them connected to permanent housing. And I'm the case manager here at this site in Puyallup.
Well, very much welcome you here, Danielle. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Rob, do you see anyone else?
I don't at this moment.
Well, then I'll turn it back to you and we can move on.
All right, thank you, Rosemary, and thank you everyone for introducing yourselves this morning. We will move on to our first item on the agenda for the day, and that is our standing item where we ask folks who are currently doing direct service and outreach to people on the streets to see if there's anything that would be good to raise to the attention of the full group in terms of changes in what you're seeing this week, needs that have changed that may be appealing to some of the 53 people in the room today could help fulfill. So this is a situation where we just kind of open the floor and see if people have things to share. So I will keep an eye out for people's raising hands, waving hands, however you want to announce yourself and then share some information with the group. Garrett?
I can go. I spent some time, a few hours at the 8th and Yakima encampment this week. And I was mostly chatting with folks just to see what sort of shelters they might be interested in, trying to be chatty and trauma informed and all the things I'm not naturally. And it was really interesting. The security was really important to them, which I was surprised at in some way. And they have a hygiene station nearby, which wasn't being maintained. And I connected in with the city, and they are going to be a little more aggressively servicing it. So I actually stopped in 3 days in a row. And the hygiene station, like the water, the hand washing didn't have water or soap or paper towels, any of my 3 stops. And the toilets really hadn't been serviced. So they're looking at being more aggressive with that. So that's good. Not much use having security if the toilets are full and there's no place to wash your hands. But so that should be good. That's really all I had. And, just nice chatting with people and just kind of always interested in what stops them from entering shelter. We talked about that a bit. Curfews, that was a big deal to a few folks I talked to. They had been at one of the TEM shelters and they really didn't like the 10 p.m. curfew. That's all I got.
Okay, that's great, actually. Anyone else have some information about folks you've interacted with on the streets this week? Maureen?
This is weird, but now that I'm venturing out of my house, people who may be working in the north end of Tacoma, I was there yesterday afternoon in a couple places between Proctor and Pearl, between 21st and 27th. And I don't know what our response is. There's a woman with a baby pretty aggressively begging at the post office entrance there on 27th and Proctor. And it appeared that a male, well, he appeared to be male, was on the parking area, and then they appeared to be connected. So I'm not sure if that's something new and I just haven't seen it. But the other one was like a single, fairly, not a teenager, but a young man, petting his puppy who was or dog about the size of a puppy, begging at that mall off of Pearl and 27th, not the one where Giuseppe's is, but on the other side of 27th. And again, I mean, do we have somebody who goes out for a single person like that? I just didn't know. He just looked so incredibly sad. And then healthcare workers are starting to tell me things like, the tech saying this parking lot, the one where Giuseppe's is and Multicare has a place there, that there's active prostitution of older women. And I don't know if it was one woman one night or many women many nights or what, but what I realized is those were things I hadn't gotten answers to from us.
Thank you, Maureen. And I don't know, I'm looking through the list of folks here. During business hours, I know in downtown Tacoma, if you see somebody who might benefit from some outreach, there's always the option to call Comprehensive Life's Positive Interactions program. They won't always be able to respond immediately, but the challenge is that I don't believe they're able to do that after hours. And I don't think they're geographically constrained, but Jan?
Yes, another on the street. Colin was notified by somebody who was able to take advantage of Safe Parking Network that she'd been notified she was positive for COVID. We got her into the system for quarantine at the county-run hotel there on Hosmer. So I'm hoping that's a success story. I haven't heard how it evolved, but that's part of the idea of Safe Parking Network or Safe Sites for All, is that when things like a positive COVID result comes back, we can actually provide options, safer options for that person and for all of us as a community.
Thank you, Jan. Anyone else before we close out this section of the meeting?
Real briefly, it looks like along the 705 tracks, their camps are building up quite frequently. Looks like most of the ones from 72nd went down the tracks, and saw 2 people going in from 40th up the tracks. So I'd say along the tracks, it's building up pretty quickly.
Thank you. And Jan?
Hi, I just had a discussion with a young man. He has 2 jobs and is desperately trying to find an apartment. And I just did not know where to send him. He has 7 felonies. So if anybody can private message me, that'd be great.
All right. All right, so let's move on to our first topic of the day, and that will be Sarah Miller from Sound Transit. Sarah reached out to me, I guess, a week and a half ago to kind of talk through some ideas for how Sound Transit can do outreach to people who are utilizing the Sound Transit rail corridor, particularly between Seattle and Tacoma and Lakewood. So Sarah, I will turn this over to you. Do you need to do a screen share?
No, I
Okay.
didn't. I was just thinking maybe it would have been helpful if I had a screen share to show the tracks that we were talking about, but I'm not that organized. So thanks for
We'll take what you got.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Sarah Miller. I'm the Transit Safety Program Manager at Sound Transit. I actually also live in Tacoma, and we are we own and operate the sounder tracks between the Tacoma Dome station and the tracks that run down through Nally Valley and stop at the South Tacoma station near 56th, and then go down to our Lakewood station, and then we own the tracks south down to DuPont there. So we do not own the tracks north of the Tacoma Dome station. We lease that space from BNSF. So that just to give you some context. And as you may all know, Amtrak is going to be using those tracks. They have had to do some significant testing and safety measures after the horrible accident in 2017. So but they have been working diligently on that, and we are working with them because it is our tracks that they'll be using. And they will be doing some train testing later this spring. The dates are still not quite decided, but in a month or so, with the goal of having them resume their full Amtrak service on that stretch in at the end of this year or beginning of 2022. So we, again, someone mentioned the number of folks who are living in that area, who are accessing those tracks, and it's obviously a huge safety concern from them. We are not well set up to do outreach to that group of people. So like, like Rob mentioned, I reached out to him and just said, we are happy to support people if there are, if it's an effective tactic to hand out flyers, I can provide flyers. If there's something else that the groups of people could use, I'm happy to have a conversation with them. But really just wanted to let people know that it was, we are concerned for their safety. They are trespassing, but right now we just want to focus on the fact that it's a really unsafe place to be, and there's going to be a lot more train activity in the pretty near future. So I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions, I will be happy to answer them, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, great. And what I was thinking, if it would be helpful for you, Sarah, is maybe we could get a few ideas from the people in the room for a couple minutes about tactics that might be useful to reach out to folks. So if anybody has anything that they think would be effective to reach out to those who are literally homeless in that corridor, this would be a great time to share those ideas. To start the thinking, one of the things that I thought of was the idea of something small like business cards that could be handed out by outreach teams when they go out and interact with people who are in that area. Because we can't reliably count on folks who are in that corridor to be gathering somewhere where you can actually do targeted communication. So those are the kinds of ideas I was thinking about, if anybody had any other possibilities. And you can raise your hand to go ahead and speak. Teresa?
I'm just curious, are there people, is there anyone coming down there now? Any outreach service folks? Are there people bringing sandwiches? Like, we get that in our neighborhood a lot. Are those things already happening, or is nothing happening?
So I did forget to mention that I reached out to a couple of the service organizations, and Greater Lakes Mental Health said that they would start doing some outreach along that corridor. I'm not sure if they've started. I hooked them up with one of our property management people who was going to give them like really specific locations of where folks tended to be congregating. And I don't know what their tactics are. I mean, Sound Transit, the reason I'm coming and asking for help is we don't have the capacity other than sending some of our law enforcement folks out, which we realize is probably not an effective tactic. So I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but just a little more context.
A little bit. So I guess the thing that probably would make people who do outreach more comfortable is if they knew there were a system for doing that where they wouldn't themselves be trespassing. So I just think that could be a good thing to try. Pardon me, to to send something out, maybe to specific people who do that work in this coalition, which we could rustle up, I think, a group of folks who do that kind of work, and say, this is what we'd like you to do. Like if you want them to check in somewhere before they go onto the property, they should need, it would help if they knew that. And if you don't care if they come and go off the property, then it would be good for them to know that too.
Well, we're in a position where they are trespassing when they're on the property. We don't want them there for safety reasons, and we're not going to help them be there safely. I guess we would prefer that they leave, but we understand the situation that we're in right now, that there's not enough places for them to go. So I think, you know, if I went back to our security folks or property management and said, hey, could you set up a place for them to let you know where they are, that would be.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't clear. I meant the outreach workers.
Oh,
So if I'm
okay,
an outreach
okay.
worker, I'm not necessarily going to be comfortable trespassing on your property unless I know it's okay.
Yes, okay, yes, that makes so much more sense. Thank you. That is a great idea. Yes, we would love to coordinate that with people who want to help us in these efforts.
And Sarah, you are getting some feedback in the chat, including Gerald from Rise actually asked to have you reach out to him, and he provided his contact information. Maureen, you have your hand up?
I do. I put some things in the chat, Sarah. Valerie and I just convene all the outreach people. And so that's an avenue maybe that she's already said she's happy to do whatever. Valerie is a Pierce County employee that we want to keep for our lifetimes. But that might be a way to work through some, you know, specific processes and things like that. But the other thing I was thinking is that the coalition has a vaccine project basically, and we're, you know, we work closely with Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and Medical Reserve and God knows who, the Needle Exchange and everybody else we can find. And we have some resources, some goodies through that vaccine project. Like we're going to have gas cards, and we're going to have, what do you call those things? Power thingies that you need for phones and stuff. And maybe there's a way to have Kevin's not here today, but I know Garrett would pick it up, and Jan and somebody else, about maybe there's a way to use the vaccine project to make contact in a way that gives the people who are living in that corridor something tangible to continue the conversation and hopefully get vaccinated too. So.
Great idea. So anyone else with ideas to share with Sarah before we move on to our next topic? All right, so thank you again, Sarah and Andrew, for joining the meeting this morning, and hopefully this plants some seeds for ways that you could try to do outreach and try to create a safer corridor there. If there's anything, last thing you want to add, this would be a good opportunity to do so.
Just say thanks for having me. This has been really productive, and I'll look forward to connecting with the folks who offered to help us out. I appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thanks, and have a great Friday. And what I'm going to do is move on to our next session of the meeting, which is an update from our friends at the Low Income Housing Institute. I believe that Sharon Lee and John Brown are both here. I'm unsure which one of you is going to speak first, so turn over the floor to you.
I'm not Sharon Lee. I'm Naomi from the Low Income Housing
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We use the same login info, but I don't see the real Sharon Lee.
Okay.
So John, do you have an update on that?
Yeah, I can definitely take it. First of all, we just want to say thank you to the coalition for having us today and all the support that you've given us with all the villages that we've opened. We greatly appreciate it. We just wanted to kind of give everybody an update on a couple things. The first thing is the city's asking us that we will have to be moving at the end of December from the Tim's location. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, that's over off 60th and McKinley. We are trying to stay there. So we're really trying to rally support because there, we are serving about between 52 and 54 individuals. And then trying to get us to move around December is going to be a difficult task. And then also, if we can't find another place to go to, that's going to be around 50 individuals that aren't going to have a home anymore and aren't going to be receiving shelter, aren't going to be receiving case management, and really aren't going to be receiving help. So we just wanted to kind of update everybody on what's going on because we know that the coalition has supported us since day one. Tim's is doing some great work over there for those of you that have been there before. And we just want to keep doing the great, amazing work that we're doing. The contract is till December, and we're trying to get it extended that we can stay there. And we just kind of wanted to update, everybody here before, if you guys hear this from anywhere else, at least you know what's going on. So that's really about it. I don't know if anybody had any questions or anything that we could answer at this time for you. If we do have.
I do have one more update, if it's okay. Do you mind if I go ahead of questions just really quick?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm just gonna share my screen really fast. Okay, presentation. Oh, here we go. Okay, we'll go through. So I just wanted to give an update on 2 additional properties that are kind of on the top of our minds at LIHI. We have tied up a hotel, the Comfort Inn, 8620 South Hosmer Street. Some of you may know where this is, the boundary, if you can see my mouse. Lakewood is right here and Tacoma, so it's right on the boundary here. And this is 91 units, 3 stories, and an additional about half an acre, 1.2 acres total of multifamily land that could be developed into future permanent supportive housing. And each room is fully furnished. And like I said, it's 15 minutes from downtown Tacoma, and then staffing would include 24/7 on-site staff, supportive services, case management. But as you know, Pierce County didn't put really any money in the budget for acquisition or these type of shelters. So this is a project that could come online very quickly as shelter units or be converted into permanent supportive housing. And so we just wanted to put that on the coalition's radar as something to advocate for and to be aware of, that this is an acquisition. We already have the property tied up. But these acquisitions have been happening across the country and present a unique opportunity to get these units at a per unit cost that is 40%, 60% under what typical units would cost. And then just really quickly, we just wanted to tell you, kind of get it on your radar. This is a permanent supportive housing development. LIHI owns this site in the Lincoln district. So Lincoln High School right here. Some of you may know that, but we are partnering with, it's a 2-phase project. I'll just really quick, you can kind of see the 2 phases here. This first phase here, we're partnering with the Asian Pacific Cultural Center to do units of APC senior housing. So this will include services. It's a 9% deal, but we hope to do homeless families in the next phase, and then continue to engage with the community about this project, about some of the retail uses for small community businesses in the area. So we're looking forward to working with you all on that, and just wanted to put that on your radar as well.
Awesome. So I'm sure we're going to have some questions from folks. So really appreciate you being here. We'll start with Teresa has her hand up.
So this just seems really counterintuitive, given that we're trying to move the needle in the other direction. My question for you, John, is what's the push for the city to have you move out? Is it just because that's how long the contract is, or are you getting some pushback from the community in some way?
No pushback from the community. It's just because the contract is up, and I guess with that, the city made a more so like a promise that the Tims would only be there for a certain amount of time. But we're not getting any pushback from the community. You know, we've been great neighbors, you know, but no pushback from the community, just more so the city wants to adhere to the promise that they made.
So I guess that would be my thought about, I think we could definitely advocate, and we should advocate for these things that you're talking about. They're great. But I also think it might be worth talking to the people in the community to say, you were told we were going to be here this long. How do you feel about us staying longer? So that you could take that to the city too.
No, that's a very good point. So we're also planning on doing that in the community, and then also with our CACs that we have, which is the Community Action Council, which comes together once a month to talk about how the village is doing. So we're also going to reach out in the community to really get their support, because we know without the community, we wouldn't be able to have the tiny house village there. You know, it takes a lot of individuals to really pull this off. And we just want to gather, you know, as many allies as we can to really support the individuals that we're helping at the tiny house villages.
John, one quick question, and Maureen posted this in the chat. Isn't the property where the site is currently located owned by Tacoma Housing Authority, and is the issue with the timing of their future development of the site, or?
So we're trying to figure that out now. We're trying to figure out if they need it, or if their project is still projected a little bit out. If it's still projected a little bit out, we can use that to say, hey, THA doesn't need it yet, so we can be here for a lot longer. So we're just trying to tie all those pieces together.
Perfect. Yeah, because it'd be helpful just to know where the rub is, so that we could help advocate effectively. Nancy, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I have a question, John, about your program. How do you get referrals? How do I make a referral?
So we actually have a referral list of other organizations within the community that send us referrals.
What is the name of your organization? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's called Low Income Housing Institute.
Okay.
But for short, most people call it LIHI, which is LIHI.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I had another question as well. I just took this position. I was laid off last March, and I work with the homeless. I've got 5 referrals for 5 people I can't find anywhere. They're not at Nativity. They're not at the Rescue Mission. And what would be a good way to look for someone who is noted as homeless in the system, short of going out and just walking around looking for them at different campsites? Do you have, and I know with HIPAA, it's very questionable. Is it possible for me to leave messages for people?
Yes, it is.
Oh, how would I do that?
I'm gonna put my email in the chat, and then we can maybe talk offline. Probably the best way to go. But I'll put my email in the chat for you.
Thank you very much.
Maureen, you have your hand up.
Thanks. Hey, Naomi, thanks for the screen sharing. I think it's really helpful to see something like that, and that's so clear. It's super. And so I want to just pick up on the, if somebody can stay around through the advocacy report, we'll talk about where we are with the county and trying to shake loose some of the ARPA money. So there's other money for acquisitions, the coming through the state and coming through the feds as well. But and the coalition put at the head of our priority list for ARPA money 1,000 doors, assuming that many of those doors were going to be hotel room doors. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Maureen. And just for everybody in the room, as a reminder of our agenda, we'll be starting those advocacy updates here shortly at around in about 5 minutes or so. So any additional questions or comments for our friends at LIHI?
I see Sharon also joined. Sharon, did you want to say anything?
Oh, no, thank you. We really want to thank you for your support on the village at 6th and Orchard. That was terrific. And we do want to find a new site for Thames 2. And I think, you know, if the housing authority is willing to extend, and then it was, and if we can, you know, convince the city that it should stay or it could be moved to another location, I think the 50 tiny houses would be really valuable to keep in the community. So, and then we're very, you know, we are very excited about the opportunity of maybe being able to purchase the hotel to address homeless people immediately. And then I think Naomi and John showed you our Lincoln District project. So we were
Yes.
going to do a community meeting. So thank you again for all your support.
Sharon, one quick question for you. Has the city talked with you about the potential of using one of the sites that they're looking at in the south end of Tacoma as a potential location to move the Thames site from McKinley? Not yet?
No, not yet. Do you know where it is or?
So there's a site at, and city staff can talk about this in their updates here later, but they're considering a site at 69th, South 69th and Proctor as a stability mitigation and stability site is how they're terming it. But in some of the conversations, there has been mentioned that of the fact that the Thames site on McKinley would need to move by the end of the year, and tying those two ideas together. So there might be an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody in the neighborhoods and community services staff with the city.
Oh, that'll be really good if there's a location. And also, I think with the changes with the housing authority, you know, major changes with the housing authority, I'm not sure that they're gonna, you know, be moving ahead as quickly as they might have thought with developing the the McKinley site. Yeah, so it's the McKinley site that is the issue that
Right.
we need a new site for. And if it's 50 units, we're also happy to divide it into like 25 at one site and 25 at another. I'm not sure how big the 69th and Proctor is.
Yeah, it's a relatively good sized site, but the city would be able to share where they are with their thoughts around that property.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so thank you for that update, and do let us know, keep us informed, John, who we can best advocate with, and I know you'll have support from this group.
Hey, no, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so let me turn the floor over to Garrett for an update on what's upcoming with the ad hoc committee report with the county.
Thank you, Rob. If you've been following along at home, we're about 4 weeks or 5 weeks into the county, Pierce County's action team, I guess. It's the ad hoc committee that they created to help put a plan together in order to develop a plan. It's rather meta, but the outcome is that we're recommending to the county council to create a group to develop a plan to end homelessness. That's something that will be due in 6 months. So at the start of November, and the product of that will be something that'll get implemented over the following years, right? To bring enough resources into the community to properly address homelessness. The second product of that group is the shelter effort that is going to create enough shelter options in Pierce County that street homelessness will be a thing of the past and everyone will have a place they belong. And it's always interesting to listen to these conversations and not wish that our success that we're planning wasn't already in front of us. So the issues that Sarah was bringing about Sound Transit, because there's not enough shelter for those people, but hopefully that'll be a mood issue for them. And there will be places those people can be that isn't noisy and dangerous like it is next to the train tracks. And even the issue that Sharon Lee and her crew brought up about how their funding seems in jeopardy, and that's, you know, we're counting on Tim's being there after the first of the year. and I think the county and city are too. So anyway, that process is moving along. We have a presentation to the County Human Services Committee, and I will put links in that after I'm done talking. And that presentation, again, it's going to be Tuesday, May 4th. So that's next Tuesday at 9:30. I'll get the right time in there. And that will be by Courtney Chandler from our coalition. And I think Heather Moss and Dr. Green and James Pogue are all going to be presenting. And it's going to be an hour plus of questions and answers and discussion. And I'm going to expect most of the county council will be present at that Human Services Committee meeting. And the request basically is the creation of these two groups, basically continuing the steering committee. And we're going to have to decide who represents us. So we basically voted Courtney and me into representing us. And with two committees going forward, it may be that there's two different groups and we really need to reassess who has capacity and time and interest in pursuing kind of those two activities. So keep in mind, if that's something that you would really like to be involved in, that's a great opportunity to take an active role in furthering the goals of this coalition. I'm gonna just ask Maureen, and I think Courtney had to jump off, and James, if he's here, if there's anything else that I missed.
I'm still here, but I think you did a good job.
Oh, and Clarice is here too, so you can chime in as well, who's also on the steering committee or ad hoc committee.
I don't have anything to add either. I think you did a good job.
Again, if you've got questions or thoughts, we're in the middle of basically we finished up our comments to the report. I had a lot of comments from the coalition that I was able to consolidate down into one set of changes, and the vast majority of those made it into the current draft, which is nice that all of our voices are respected in this process. So if you got any other comments, shoot them out to me or to Courtney, and we are happy to answer questions or figure out how we can direct the process. Thanks, everybody.
And I just think we owe a real debt to Courtney and Garrett for really hanging in and representing us, for James for representing the continuum, and Clarissa, the city. I think we really, if you watch those sessions, you all did us proud, and thank you.
So any quick questions for Garrett before we move on to the advocacy updates from Maureen? I am not seeing any. Garrett, if you can put the meeting information in the chat, we're gonna be, we'll move to Maureen now.
Thank you. So I asked Rob to bump us up because I want to make sure that we all acknowledge the incredible work Cynthia Stewart has done during this legislative session. And she has to jump off this call before I usually report. So a big thank you to her. With the, Cynthia, if you don't know, is with the League of Women Voters. She carries the League's homelessness and housing agenda with the state, as well as a raft of other important issues. But so thank you, Cynthia. Okay, now here we go. And it's going to be a ride, even though we've got a little more time. At the federal level, the rescue plan money, ARPA. So this is the money under the Biden administration that's already hitting the streets, like through the economic impact payments, things like that. So there are two programs in that rescue plan that are coming through HUD. One of that is coming by allocation directly to the city of Tacoma, the city of Lakewood. They have a consortium around what's called home money, and that's how this money is coming, and to Pierce County. We're in contact with both of the leaders, the staff, on both of those allocation paths to talk about how they're going to use this just over $10 million between them. And it can be used for acquisition, among other things. So they don't have the HUD guidance yet, but we're in contact with them. The second part coming through HUD that's really important to us are those new housing vouchers that are coming to the public housing authorities by allocation. We don't know what that allocation is yet. It's different from past ones. Pierce County Housing Authority will have some. Tacoma Housing Authority will have some. We're in contact with both housing authorities about how they plan to do that. We think that it's about 2 weeks out from getting the guidance from HUD on those. And so what we just want to make sure is that the coalition has an opportunity for a voice, as well as any of you who on behalf of your respective programs and organizations, but we want to make sure that the coalition's there. So other ARPA, the county council. So those of you who followed the county council decisions Tuesday night. So when we went on Friday morning, we thought that it was the county executive's proposal that was going to go forward. That was the 68 million plus for homelessness and housing. That is not what happened. The county council, which they've got the right to do, they put forward their own proposal for allocation of the money. And there are some technical things that are at issue, but the reality is that only 2.4 million of that 175 plus million, half of which is coming about May 10th, was allocated for homelessness. Zero was allocated for housing acquisition or development. And some of the money that was allocated went in what are called earmarks. It was an amount of money to a specific organization. CLR got 300,000 for their youth programs. Somebody else got 100,000. I think it might be the Y, but I'm not totally certain because the Y got $100,000 earmark. So one of the, and there's $2 million for homelessness services that the county will put out, you know, Pierce County Human Services is going to put out like they always do in a NOFA. So we made it, we contacted the county council Sunday night, Monday morning, Monday day. But where we are is that the council only approved the year one money, about $88 million, which means that that year two money is just sitting out there waiting, and the county can't do anything with it. In housing development, you can do what's called a forward commitment. If you know that you've got money coming, a government, you know, like this money coming, you can forward commit some of that money, which is important many times because what's called the pipeline, how long it takes to develop housing, if you're a nonprofit housing developer, can be years in some cases. And so you need to line up all the funding sources to be able to do that. So that's one thing we are hoping that they will change as they begin to realize the benefits of doing that. The other thing is that they've got about 35 million in the contingency fund on this first 88 million plus dollars. And the council members, council chair who have come back to us have said, look, we're committed to ending homelessness. We're committed to developing housing, but we want very specific plans. We are waiting on the reports from the ad hoc committee, and we want very, very specific proposals out of those reports on how to spend this money. So the takeaway for me is this is a different council. This is a county council that wants to be engaged in a very hands-on manner, which around the housing and homelessness, which was not the same way that the old council operated. So we just keep informing, educating, especially when it comes to opportunities that might be at risk if the organizations applying don't have the money either out of that contingency fund or out of the second year's forward commitment possibility. And so again, that's somewhat more technical and in the weeds than you might want to know, but just to know that that is, those two things are really important. And the better these plans are coming out of these two committees that Garrett has talked about, the more chance we have of getting as much of that money as possible. And so that's on us, all right? And it really is the opportunity, if you're a provider or if you are a nonprofit housing developer, this really, put this in front of your phone or your computer or something that, if we only had fill in that sentence, we could do fill in the sentence. All right. If we need 24/7, some kind of response, get it into these plans going forward. So this is a time when it's the more specific providers can be, the better we're going to come out of this. So now other things in ARPA to keep an eye on, one are those stimulus checks, the economic impact payments. Folks, a lot of your check with your clients. If you are any kind of a client person, make sure that they have received their stimulus check. If they've got a Social Security number, they are potentially eligible, but they might have to file 2020 federal taxes. Even if they don't have to file ever, for this purpose, they might have to file. The best source is actually irs.gov, and it's that Get My Payment portal and the FAQs. Now, some places have run into trouble. The IRS has not issued the checks because there have been multiple people using the same address, which is legal. That's not the issue. The issue is that the IRS's systems are catching that as potentially fraudulent. So Representative Pramila Jayapal actually has a staffer who is leading this, the EIP charge, if you will. And if you are running into those kinds of problems, let me know. I'll give you the contact information. And so we want to get this money out, and the IRS wants to get it out, and the Biden administration wants to get it out. The tax credits for families with children, the guidance is starting and process is starting to come out on that. Looks like that'll turn into dollars for the eligible families around the 1st of July, which could make a huge difference for those of you who are working with families with children. I forgot to look at the cities. I think they've made a presentation already on how they propose to use their ARPA money, and I forgot to look. I got so caught up in the county part. Excuse me, what's coming? The jobs bill, the infrastructure bill, the family bill. What they're going to look like, we don't know, but we do know that they can come forward and be passed under the continuing resolution, just like ARPA. There are limits to what can be done, but some of this money is going to come. Okay, now with the state, the legislature adjourned on time. The last couple of weeks of the session were frantic. Thank you to those of you who responded to the alerts from the Alliance we sent out, and to alerts that the advocacy organizations that you belong to, because of the particular work you're doing, sent out. How many minds we change is one thing, but the other thing is, even if you know the person is aligned with what we want them in a position to say, I just got 50 phone calls this morning supporting this. So we're backing them up, basically propping them up. So the Alliance will update at 1 o'clock today, and then I'll send something out probably over the weekend. But in brief, this was an absolutely astounding legislative session for homelessness and housing. It was just unbelievable. So we now have just cause. Tenants across the state of Washington have just cause. You cannot be evicted because somebody wants to evict you. You can still be evicted for a business purpose, for doing something illegal, all those kinds of things. But this is huge, all right? Tenants across the state of Washington have the right to counsel. They have the right to an attorney. 5160 is a complicated bill, and we will continue to put out guidance about how to use it. Not meaning me, but the people who actually understand it. But those two things, the right to counsel and just cause, should keep an enormous number of tenants housed. So that helps us. There's a wonky bill that has to do with the Growth Management Act and planning, which requires jurisdictions to go back through their planning process and make sure that they are not making it impossible for shelters, transitional housing, other kinds of programs to exist within their jurisdiction. And they also must review their racist covenants. And again, there are more things in there. And if you, these kinds of issues, we're going to take up in our new housing committee. So if you haven't put yourself on the housing listserv yet, please do that. And we'll have a date for our first meeting. Hopefully within the next few days, I'll send out a date. Now, there's also a marvelous bill called 1277. That's an additional $100 on the document recording fee. It doesn't affect the people that we are most concerned about. It affects those of us who actually can buy a house or refinance a house, that sort of thing, where $100 is negligible. And that creates permanent source of funding around a rental assistance plan. There's supportive housing operating money in there, and there's the landlord mitigation fund as well. And so we start to get some permanent sources of money that allow us to actually plan, because we know we're going to have a certain amount of money to work with. Then also on the multifamily tax exemption, those of you who love that, there were changes. It's still there. There are changes. And again, that information will come out. Now the budget. So HEN got increased, housing and essential needs. There are a lot of increases on the operating side, but on the capital side, remember the state has two budgets. And the capital side, there's money in the Housing Trust Fund. There's a new rapid shelter acquisition fund of about 125 million, which is another source for hotel acquisitions. There's again, the shelter expansion fund, like the way the Puyallup shelter is funded. A lot of folks in the coalition got line item allocations. Shiloh for their housing project, LASA for their community center, Asia Pacific Center for their development. Excuse me. Okay, we've talked about the county. We have discovered that the county has a policy, an administrative policy on unauthorized encampments on city property, which we will take up. We've got the city's 5-year strategy, which they'll talk about. The rental housing code changes, put that on the listserv last night. And the last thing is that, excuse me, Allison Needles did reach out to us. She's the reporter with the News Tribune. She's on our listserv. Sometimes attends our meetings. She reached out to Rob and Garrett and Kevin and me for a story that she's doing on the city of Tacoma's response compared to homelessness, comparing 2017 to today. Excuse me. And Kevin and Garrett and I met with her representing the coalition. And we talked about things like, and I've shared this with Linda Stewart also, our conversation. We talked about how up to this point, it seems like the city's response has been reactive to crisis, and that this provides, because of the funding, because of the political will, because of these, the ad hoc committee and the plans hopefully moving forward around ending street homelessness and the comprehensive plan, we're in a position to, as a community, think strategically forward rather and try to get out of just this crisis response. We talked about structural issues in the city. Does NCS actually have all of the type of staffing it needs? And none of this is a critique of current staff. I want to be really clear, but do they have enough staff with the right experience and skills and knowledge to do what we're expecting them to do, because Tacoma, the city of Tacoma, still carries the brunt of response. The location of shelters, the location of unsheltered people, and the location of services. And then we talked about the other issues like how we need to figure out the appropriate way to engage law enforcement, and exactly what that is, how we handle community pushback, which is, as you know, is pretty significant in some of these projects. And then just structural issues, recognizing the issues the city can't control. They can't control COVID happening. They can't control the increased housing and the disproportionality between incomes and the cost of housing. I mean, there are some things they can't control. The state of Washington's inadequate mental health system. So, I mean, there's an environment that they're working in that it's important to recognize. So, I mean, I think we were fair, and I think, we'll see the story when it comes out. But I just really think that I keep saying I know, but I guess I want to hear the chorus, that I think we have a moment, despite we didn't get the budget out of the council we wanted. We don't have all of the players online yet, but it feels different. It feels more hopeful. So, and part of that is the fact that the providers, all of you, you all play nice, and that doesn't happen everywhere. And that's really critical to moving forward collectively. So thank you for that. So, and thank you for listening and for this.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for all your work on tracking this information and bringing it to us every week. I think it's critical. So do we have any questions for Maureen before we move on to further updates?
Yeah, I have a comment to make. Hi, this is Sharon. Sure. Hi. So I did talk to the Department of Commerce, and they are going to hold a meeting May 17th to get moving, especially they're looking for stakeholder input. I think it's the 17th at 2:30 or something like that. And then they're also going to review it with the policy advisory team, the PAT, and then especially about the rapid building acquisition program, how to structure that, and also discussions around how to structure the vouchers. There's two sources of operating support. One is the OMS, operating maintenance services. That's going to be for permanent supportive housing. And it's going to fund, if you remember last year, they had it as well. It's going to fund existing permanent supportive housing and then new ones. And then with the 1277, they're going to be looking at 113 million that will be available, that will include the vouchers, like some type of rental vouchers, but it will also include, other types of homeless service programs as well. So I think what Maureen said is really good. This is a really good opportunity to get projects funded. And we know that the market is, more depressed now, and it's going to recover. I think the market's going to recover really quickly. And so this is a good time to try and line up more resources, housing and homeless resources for Tacoma and Pierce County. So that's it.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other comments or questions? All right, so let's move on in our agenda. Thank you everyone for the advocacy updates. In this portion of our meeting, we'll switch to our regular government updates. And first on the list, I have Clarissa from the city of Tacoma. Do you have any updates for us this week?
I do. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
So this week we met with Colin and Kevin. I think I saw Kevin on the call earlier. I hope you feel better soon. And we talked about their safe parking and mitigation site design ideas. They gave us a lot of feedback that we're chewing on, and we really hope that we get to work with the coalition moving forward on some more site design ideas as well. We are hiring for a community safety analyst as part of our Transforming Tacoma work, which is exciting. This is a new position that will look at how we prioritize and we provide safety services. This is the opportunity for us to evaluate processes and recommendations for what would be a new Office of Community Safety at the city. I'm going to put a link to the job description in the chat for you guys if anybody's interested in applying. And we also were able to locate some cots for House of Prayer. We heard that was a need of theirs last week. And we did reach out and weren't able to get a hold of them. So if anybody does come in contact with anyone from over there, please let them know that we have a bunch of cots for them if they like. We have no encampment cleanups this week. The Salvation Army Winter Warming Center is closing on Friday. There are still some single men who need shelter space. So if anybody knows of any openings, please contact Salvation Army. Hygiene Station at 705 and A Street open Wednesday. We're still working out details on the Evergreen. As of now, we do not have an update on the youth drop-in center. We're working on it. We're hoping to identify a provider for the youth shelter very soon. And as soon as we know more details about that, we will let you guys know. The rental assistance is still available. I'll put a link to that in the chat as well. And updates for our current census and outcomes for temporary and emergency shelters are on our website. And I'm also putting that in the chat for you guys too. And we presented to council on the 27th. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put the link in as well. And that's all we got this week. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, you're welcome. So does anybody have any quick questions for Clarissa before we move to the next update? All right, if you do, you can feel free to put those in the chat. I know that Clarissa will see them, and we will shift over to Valerie now with updates from Pierce County.
Good morning. So first follow up with the outreach teams. All of the outreach teams and the Pierce Transit have been invited to a meeting at Tuesday at 11 a.m. So if you did not get that invite and you would like to attend, please email me. I put that in the chat as well. So just let me know if you'd like to attend that meeting. Those are twice a month meetings that already happen, as well as we also meet with the outreach teams to plan the vaccination sites with Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. So all great news there. Hi, Nancy. Yes, I can send it again. And then for the rental assistance, so as you all heard from Maureen, only 2.4 million has been allocated for homeless. So we will be putting in an OFA. 2.4 million unfortunately doesn't go that far, but we will be doing an OFA and be keeping folks updated as soon as we have more information on when that will go out. And then rental assistance, we got word yesterday from the American Relief Act. We received just over 6 million because you only get 40% of your first allotment. And so we are working out that on top of the 56 million we currently have now. And so just lots of little moving parts to do. So we still are processing applications. Providers are doing a great job of getting folks paid. We are paying up to 12 months of rent at one time because a lot of folks have not paid any rent since March of 2020, as well as utilities. We have partnered with the City of Tacoma every step of the way. And so we are actually, they have a set aside funds for TPU clients specifically. And so our 8 providers, as well as LASA, which is the City of Tacoma provider, are all utilizing those funds for TPU, and we are using our funds for rent, as well as any client outside of City of Tacoma. We are using our dollars for that. So lots still moving around. We are creating a portal update. We are still working on the data. Hopefully by next week, we'll have that live. We just really want to make sure the data that goes out is accurate. And so as soon as that's up, I will send you all a link. And then we are moving everything else along. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And as I said last week, if you have specific needs, This week's been a weird week. I got my second vaccine and I felt like I missed like 3 whole days, but I was only out 1. But I've been playing catch up ever since. So just been fun. So okay, everyone have a great day and let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Valerie. And anybody with questions for Valerie? All right, so if you do have questions, you know how to reach her, and you can also use the chat. So let's see. I'm looking through my list of folks on the call, and I see Rihanna from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department is here. Rihanna, do you have any update this week?
Hi, Rob. I
That's
think
not Rihanna.
I believe Rihanna stepped away for a second, so I'm happy to provide health department updates for everyone. So, hi everyone. Good morning. So the health department is continuing to vaccinate the homeless population, including shelters, and we're also planning vaccine sites for encampments, working with Valerie and the outreach teams to kind of coordinate and strategize for that. So we're also planning for booster sites for folks who had started their first dose at various sites when we had the J&J pause for that brief amount of time. So planning those booster sites to get those second doses for folks. During those sites, we're also going to be offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at those sites for folks who are interested in getting the first dose. And we also acknowledge that, you know, with the pause in J&J, there is a little bit of increased hesitancy. So we're planning on creating communications materials. Those are kind of in the works right now. We'll be giving those to sites so that they can have some materials on hand. Also, though, we acknowledge that you know, people will still be hesitant. So we will be offering an alternative for folks who decline the Johnson & Johnson, but are still interested in getting the vaccine. This is just a way for us to, you know, acknowledge that there is hesitancy as we're trying to work and kind of combat some of that, but also still get folks vaccinated who want to get vaccinated as well. So continuing to, yeah, just plan those events. We'll be offering $5 gift cards for folks who attend those booster events to encourage getting everyone getting those second doses. And then as of right now, there's currently 315 people who've been vaccinated who have been living homeless, and we'll be providing those booster events, kind of confirming those details early next week. So we shall have more insight on that next week for more events to come. So thanks everyone. I'm happy to answer any questions. And yeah, everyone have a great Friday.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody with questions? All right, so I'm not seeing any. So what I'm going to do is shift on to our next item on the agenda, and this one I've listed Maureen as the contact, so I'll let you carry that, but if you need to refer off to those of us who've also been involved in this conversation about the city of Tacoma camping ban, let us know.
Excellent, thank you. So those of you who've been following this know that the city of Tacoma did put forward a broad and what was termed cruel ordinance on use of public property, all public property of all kinds in the city of Tacoma, within the city of Tacoma. And we asked the council to put a pause on consideration of that ordinance because we felt that it was overly punitive and did not reflect the council's just passed update to their emergency declaration and their commitment to ending street homelessness and the comprehensive plan that the county is working on. So, and they did put a pause. And so since for the last 2 weeks, a group of 6 of us from the Coalition Steering Committee have been meeting with Representative Toms, the Deputy Mayor, Member Blocker, and Mayor Woodards, and with the City Attorney. and council staff person Linda Foster. And and I know others of you have had conversations with Councilmember Toms as well, which is great. So here's where we are. We have met in our last meeting yesterday, which seems like about a year ago right now. So now we are actually looking at the ordinance itself. Ordinance has two parts. It has the whereases, which are important because they set the context for interpretation. And so if there were to be a legal challenge of some sort, the court would look at those whereases in part as part of their decision making. And the other part is the actual proposed code change. So Garrett, so Deputy Mayor Blocker had put forward the first change, which was the section on, punishment. And so moved that $1,000 fine to a $25 fine, with the first two tickets being civil infractions and no jail time. And the third ticket then being a criminal misdemeanor with a $250 fine and 30 days jail time, up to 30 days jail time, and or both, okay. So then Garrett put forward changes yesterday. And so now we have a working document that has changes in pink, green, and yellow. And we'll probably have more, but the Councilman Tom's first read during the meeting yesterday morning was that he didn't see any problems in what Garrett had put forward on our behalf. So these are the things that we left the meeting with. We'll meet again next Thursday morning. And so these are the things we left. We all agree that we're looking for clarity. Everybody wants clarity, wants processes that we all understand and can agree to. I have not committed the coalition, none of us have, to agreeing to an ordinance that punishes people who are experiencing homelessness, who live on public property because we don't have enough shelter. All right, I've made no commitments. The commitment that I've made on our behalf is that we will work through this line by line to try and get something that does what we want and what the city wants. And I think everybody wants, is that everybody who's experiencing homelessness has a safe and decent place to live right now. So I think one of my takeaways is that some of the things that seem inconsequential to the city attorney or to our elected officials, when we bring forward the facts of what those things mean to people that we know who are experiencing homelessness, they take that information in as valid. They don't question what we bring them. And I find that really helpful in going forward. I've also now learned the difference between a civil infraction and a criminal misdemeanor. Excuse me. Okay, so this is where we are. We've asked the city to remove the power of police as the location of what gives this ordinance authority, and we believe that they will do so. They are reviewing the changes that Garrett had put forward, and obviously that has to go through the city legal. We've asked them to revise that 72-hour language. It makes no sense to issue a sweep notice at 8 o'clock Friday morning for a sweep at 8 o'clock Monday morning. They will review the clauses that they used in another recent ordinance, the one around the affordable housing tax, where the whereases are very positive towards why we need this tax and the people who will benefit and things like that. And we've asked for that same kind of whereas clauses that reflect positively on people experiencing homelessness and the city's commitment. The city is going to review the fine and jail section and to consider the unintended consequences that we brought forward, that for some people, $25 might as well be $1,000. And once you've got that record, you're accumulating additional fines, you're accumulating additional items on your public record that even though these did not go to court and they were not dismissed, that they're still there. And so you're impeding the possibility of some people to be able to ever really get permanent housing and maybe a job as well. We brought forward the recognition of the need that this ordinance absolutely has to recognize the Americans with Disabilities Act, given the high percentage of people, well, first of all, it has to, but given the high percentage of people who are experiencing homeless, whom we know have either a diagnosed or an obvious mental disability of some sort or physical. The city is going to add in their own anti-discrimination laws, references, and there may be some others as well. And Rob brought forward, and then Teresa followed in, and Jeffrey, on some kind of something we had not brought forward before in terms of options, but some kind of a contingency site. So if we get to the point where the person, we have enough options. We've got Garrett's heroin addict with his Rottweiler. We've got two options for him. He refuses both. What happens next? And so the new idea on the table is some sort of an authorized contingency site where that person could go with whatever they have, total low barrier, harm reduction, and would have so many days to be able to be there and to help either by themselves or with assistance figure out an acceptable option for them and their life. We are still left with that final awful question. Is there a point where because you are homeless and you refuse whatever options, you could be arrested? So that's still the unanswered question. So what else? We'll keep developing scenarios. We'll keep walking the city folks through the unintended consequences that we know of what they're putting forward, and try to get them to a point where we have something that we actually like. So I know I used most of the time. Rob, Teresa, Jeffrey, Garrett, Kevin couldn't join us, but the rest of you want to add something in?
I also wonder if there's anybody from the larger group who had questions or comments to add into our thinking as we look forward to another meeting with council members on Thursday next week. Thank you,
And
chat, Teresa, I see that.
We were not Tacoma Now, Housing Now. We were a different group. It's a momentary blurring of who was at the table. Okay, so if you're talking with them independently and there's something that you think we should know, please let us know, okay? We're not suggesting other channels be closed. We're just saying this is the channel the coalition is using, and you know, so far seems to be working. And we're learning a lot. I think I'm learning a lot, especially from Councilmember Tom's. The more he declares about his background, the easier I find it is to work with him.
I was just going to chime in too. It's not an adversarial conversation, which is surprising to me. It feels very much like we're all trying to get something put in place that that really is respectful and doesn't damage people. and that seems to be, everyone in the room has that approach, which doesn't mean we'll come up with something amazing. I think we'll get something that's livable, but it's nice. It's a nice place to be in, a healthy, productive conversation, as opposed to, arguing over motives and things like that. There doesn't seem to be any of that. So.
Yet.
Rob, Teresa, Jeffrey, anybody else?
I put mine in the chat.
Oh, good.
That's kind of all I have to say.
Okay.
Except for this, thank you. Maureen, Garrett, Rob, this stuff I don't see it happening without all of that upfront work you did to get the conversation going. But I also want to say, Councilmember Tom's really picked it up. I mean, he's really working hard on this, and I'm very impressed with that. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is just I applaud his energy and willingness to meet with so many of us, because he met with the Safe Sites for All group on Monday as well, which I'm sure that Jan and I'll talk about here shortly. But he's been very willing to listen and to kind of reflect back what he's hearing. So
I've essentially found this a very positive experience, and really feel that Tom's is reaching out to us to help him get the information he needs to make the right decision.
And we're doing something, you know, in terms of, I mean, these are almost like negotiations, that is very deliberate in that we are highlighting and following those points where we agree, or where we can easily clarify a misunderstanding. And I think that's part of what's leading us to a point where we'll be able to deal with the most contentious part as we get there. And Clarissa, I just, so that you know, and any other city people who happen to be on the call, I did call Linda Stewart, the Director of Neighborhood and Community Services, yesterday, and I did update her because there are no NCS staff. There are no other city staff, only the city attorney and on this in this process. And so I didn't go through all the details or anything, but just let her know. I mean, I knew she knew, but I wanted her to know that we wanted her to know that this is what we're engaged in. So, and the other thing, I want to thank Lori Tacoma Pro Bono. I don't know if Jennifer's on from Northwest Justice, but we do have a sort of legal team. Tristia Bauman from the National Homelessness Law Center has been with us from the day this ordinance appeared. Jennifer Ammons, and then Jennifer suggested we bring in Tacoma Pro Bono because they have more latitude than Northwest Justice has on some issues like this. So our thanks to all of them. And they, you know, they read things for us and make recommendations. And so it's a village. So please do reach out to probably to Garrett and to me if you've got questions, suggestions, comments, concerns, anything. And like I say, we will not commit the coalition. At some point, we'll bring this to a vote. So thank you.
thank you, Maureen. So at this time, we will shift over to, let's see, I see Jan is on the call and Colin is here as well. Do you want to give us an update on what's happening with Safe Sites for All and safe parking?
Colin, are you still here? You thought you might have to jump off. Are you still here?
You may not be able to talk.
All right. And I will call on Jeffrey to fill in the gaps. This Safe Parking Network and Safe Sites for All committee needs to be put forward as a true success story of the coalition. To give you an example, I was out at dinner with my husband. I get a text from Colin saying that a client that we have in one of our Safe Parking Network sites just got word of being positive for COVID. Does she qualify for isolation at the hotel? Well, she does, but it is then incumbent on Colin to figure out the backdoor way of getting folks in, because she was notified by her testing site, which was a pharmacy. They're not connected into the admission process of getting into isolation. So Colin and I were able within minutes to get her in. But that tells me is that we need to have a closer relationship with the health department in after hours, non-medical clinic sites for positive cases. So this is an example where the coalition has a broad network of folks and connections. She's safe. Colin says it's a wonderful success story. And we'll just tighten these gaps as we identify them. So it's a changing environment. Who knew that a pharmacist could diagnose COVID and then drop the person, right? The person is then dropped. So it's our job as a coalition to work together to get those folks safely treated. So that's a success story. We also have 3 very well-run, up and running sites, safe parking sites in our network that all 3 have spaces available. One's in Puyallup, one's on the east side, and one is in South Tacoma. There should be soon, we're close to opening up another one in Lakewood. It'll be our first site in Lakewood. So please refer folks. And another great story is that Sherry from our coalition had a person who really would qualify for safe parking. She texted me with the number and the name. I texted Colin. That woman, it was safely put into a site within less than 24 hours. So the system is working, but we need more sites in more geographic areas. We need more stronger connections between our networks, and we're getting there. So Jeffrey, what am I missing? Yes, we did have a wonderful meeting with Councilmember Toms. I think that you already hit the highlights on that. I think that he is now part of our choir. So although he's a politician, I think they can change stripes pretty quickly depending on the weather. But anyway, that was a real positive meeting that we had. Jeffrey, jump in here.
I think a lot of it was Tom saw that things were happening and that we were moving ahead, and that the Safe Parking Network, or the Safe Sites for All, is really an action group that gets things done. And he was pleased to see that. So I think that's building the foundation for communication with the city council, that we can show them that when we see a problem, we fix it. We don't wait for it to have somebody else to do it.
Teresa, I see your hand up.
I just want to say, if this sounds really exciting to any of you, we are delighted to have new people come and join us. The link is right on the page there, so come on down. And it's a good group to work with.
And the page that Teresa's referring to is the pchomeless.org website, which really is the centralized place for all of the work the coalition is doing. So please visit, see what's there, and sign up for mailing lists and join us in the meetings. Do we have other questions for the safe parking folks? Safe Sites for All folks? Jan, would it be appropriate to mention the sites that are currently operating for parking? Just so the folks are aware.
We've decided to keep that not secret so much as limited information, just because of the politics of the neighborhoods. We've had, so far we've had great response by our neighbors, and we respect their privacy. But once the contact is made, then there's full disclosure between the client, potential client, and the site.
Perfect. Thank you, Jan. So any questions for this portion of the meeting before we move on to just some general coalition announcements, if there are any? All right, I'm not seeing any. So this next portion of the meeting was going to be run by Kevin, who's under the weather, so can't join us today. Garrett, are you aware of anything that we need to announce that we have not already related to the coalition, or should we just shift to items for the good of the order?
Our vaccine work is kind of ramping up. We've put a bunch of hygiene kits together. We've got, like we mentioned earlier, battery packs to charge phones with, and gas cards coming along. We'll be doing another fairly large grant around vaccine support next week. That's kind of where Kevin's focusing his time now with some of the grant money we have. His time with the coalition has been extended, a big chunk of which is working on coordinating support for vaccines. Unfortunately, the state doesn't really have a way to track how many people experiencing homelessness get vaccinated, which kind of pisses me off, to be honest. And it's a key piece of data in a population that really matters to all of us. So trying to kind of put pressure on them to make changes, which isn't going to help us now, but might help us in the future. I think that's about it. I've been puttering with the website a little bit, the coalition website. We've got a new committees page, which highlights the committees that the coalition runs, as well as kind of a list of places we are currently having sort of representatives to. So we're going to talk more at a future meeting about kind of formalizing some of our representatives on different groups. And the last thing is just to put something in the, what do you call it? The corner of your mind. There's got to be a word there that I can't come up with. Is it, I was digging around trying to find people's contact information, and I was thinking about putting a little member directory together. So something you'd have to log into as a coalition member, and you could decide to have some contact information in it that other people could then search for. And so just maybe drop something in the chat if you think something like that would be useful, or something like that would sort of be something you wouldn't bother to maintain, and so you wouldn't expect others to maintain, and so maybe not so useful. That's all I got, although I see Rosemary has her hand up. That's a question for me or a good of the order?
Well, actually, it is for you, Garrett. I was thinking about the website updates that people who are providers or advocates need to keep updated, and wondering if there are any exhortations you would be needing to make about things that have fallen by the wayside a bit, or something that would be useful for people to update now.
Well, all the shelter providers, again, one of the narratives that I find so struggling is this sense that there are shelter beds available in the community and that people are refusing to take them. And that narrative is going to be challenging for us to overcome. And the best way we can do it is by having really accurate information on current availability in all of our shelters. So if you manage a shelter, get busy managing that information on the website so that we all know where we can direct folks, and so that we can also communicate to the community just how tight shelter bed space is. And as we try to ramp up for November 1st, that information I think will be really helpful, as there is actual availability and getting folks to an appropriate place for them. And Janie.
Hey, 2 points, Garrett. First of all, you said that it matters to us about people being vaccinated because these are our people, so to speak. From a public health point of view, it really, really should matter also. Secondly, I just want to say that LAHSA is set to receive money to put in a laundry and shower, and I'm real excited about that. And don't wait to take a bath, because it's going to take us a while to set it up, but I'll share more as I know more. And thanks for everyone's support on that.
Thanks, Marie. Oh, not hearing you.
I got it. Thank you. I want to follow up on your statement about, public availability of beds, something that Councilmember Tom said. He doesn't understand why we don't have something like Travelocity, and you just, pull up the date and it's got all of the, for Travelocity, it'd be hotels, but it's got all the shelters, and you just look for an empty room and you just click it. So, all right. So I just, he's thinking. So you think too. And then you think about who would run that, but.
All right, so thank you, Garrett, for those updates. And I did put the coalition website link again in the chat if folks have a moment to go take a look at that. I also recognize James in his comment about, nobody is being paid to run that system, and city electeds should be aware of that. Maybe that's a good reminder to folks. So this time we actually, shockingly enough, do not have a meeting that's going to run over, but we do have some extra time. So if people have items for the good of order that they want to share, this would be the opportunity. Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. As an alternative, we can have 15 extra minutes in our day. I see some cheering for that. Oh, but Garrett has his hand up.
So I bumped into a team going to encampments and offering COVID-19 testing. I can't remember what organization they're with, but it's a nationwide organization. And I just want to let you know that I invited them to this meeting, and they were like, where can I go to more encampments? If I can't find encampments and people willing to get tested, I can't keep doing this in the community. So I'm going to connect with a number of you. I already hooked in with James, but I think they'd love to go out with some outreach teams. And it's pretty slick. They do the swab there, they send it to a lab in California. If you're positive, they find you again if they can to let you know. And no cost, pretty, you can get a test every couple of weeks. So it's to be a good resource for us to have. So anyway, I've got the email is all for the gal. And so I'll reach out to our outreach crew, but if you want to connect in with that, give me a holler. Thanks.
Thanks, Garrett. Julian?
Thanks, Rob. Just wanted to make another announcement for the Pierce County Accessible Community Advisory Committee. We have a regular session coming up on Tuesday, May 11 at 9 o'clock on Zoom. And we can help expedite funding for accessibility projects in Pierce County. So I look forward to helping people who want to advance projects that help make things more accessible, particularly for people with disabilities. And so I look forward to helping out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julian. And any others with announcements or items for the good of the order?
Hi, Rob. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sherry.
Hello. I just wanted to share with the group that Vallejo's finally hired our hire pilot supervisor. She is wonderful. She was actually one of the very first recipients of the TEP program. We connected with her when she was a resident at the stability site, and she fully traveled all of the phases of TEP. And I really feel the program was designed for her. And so she's been up and going for the last couple of weeks. She'll be on next Friday's meeting. So stay tuned with that. I'm so excited for her to be a part of the team.
Fantastic. And Sherry, let me know, or let Garrett and I know if you'd actually like a little bit of time on the agenda to talk about that work, and to introduce her next week. So
Awesome. I'll shoot you an email.
okay, cool. All right, everybody. So we are at 10:45, and I think this is the first time since I don't remember when we've actually finished before 11. If you, as always, if you want to stay on the call, we will have a small group of us doing organizing for next week's meeting and meetings beyond that. And if you need to take off, we understand. We hope everybody has a great Friday and good weekend, and enjoy yourself, stay safe, get your vaccines, and we'll see you next week.